The basic idea of quantum physics is that quantum physics is the physics of possibilities. Lies, lies, and nobody thinks anything of it. That's the worldview. That's materialism, which is a big lie. This crisis will make us think, okay, what did we do wrong? And we'll see that this hypothesis, matter is everything, has been the basis of all these problems that started since. Archetypes are needed because without them, we lose civilization and we forever live in chaos. Archetypes is our vehicle to pursue meaning and purpose.
Well, I consider this to be one of a series of books that you've been working on. Amit, how does archetypes, the concept of archetypes, fit with the quantum activism that you so readily promote and are very behind?
You know, we always say that quantum activism is to live the quantum principles and then at the same time teach it to others. And the way to live the quantum principles is the way of the archetypes. The archetypes, love, beauty, justice, truth, goodness, and abundance, power. All these archetypal entities that are the values that consciousness gives us, if we live them and then propagate them to our capacity, teach others, that's quantum activism. That's really the import of quantum activism. The quantum principles of non-locality is involved in how we intuit the archetypes. Quantum principle of discontinuity in action that is involved in the quantum leap that we take in a creative insight about the archetype. And then tangle hierarchy, the third quantum principle of relationship is involved when we manifest the archetype in our life and manifest an archetype in relationship.
So I'm thinking some of my subscribers are really not aligned to the idea of quantum physics and this sort of thing. So the word quantum will immediately kind of put them off, but they might be brave enough to click on the button and dive into this. So in reading the book, will people get fundamentally the principle of what you have just explained?
Yeah, I mean, that is the whole point. So all my books, I actually give a synopsis of the basics. The basic idea of quantum physics is that quantum physics is the physics of possibilities. And for possibilities, they're not reality. Somebody has to choose from the possibilities to make reality. And that chooser is consciousness. So this begins the journey, which of course then asserts that an observer is needed. In the process, consciousness splits itself into the observer's consciousness, personal consciousness, and the objects that the personal consciousness experiences. So in this way, the experiences are giving validation. You know, neuroscientists, they're so backward that, you know, these ideas have been around for 30 years, but they're still struggling with the idea of how to explain experience, how to explain the subject-object split, subject-object dichotomy of experience. The materialist models are all about consciousness as an object. But consciousness, of course, in our experience is not an object. That is the part of consciousness which makes us so curious and also at once so much able to do things in the world. Because consciousness is a subject, it's a self within us. We do things, we initiate things, we are creative about things, we can change. These ideas are anathema to materialist scientists. So this is, of course, a problem for the worldview to take immediate attraction for the scientific community. But thank God, people don't always obey the scientific community materialist directions.
Valentina, you're a practicing medical doctor. So you literally, in your practice, you are practicing this quantum activism process, this way of living. Can you tell us a little bit about how that kind of works for you in everyday life?
Yeah, because again, starting from the personality, so if you, I mean, this is big terms again, but if you can refer to your soul as light, if you let it shine, then we would be happy. And there's a state of health that comes from that being natural and happy, in line with your soul, let's say, in the spiritual. Because again, I have been studying spirituality for as long as I studied medicine, so since I was in my very early age. And now again, according to various traditions, so when we speak about karma, we can say that you incarnate in a family, and you live certain, especially the first life experiences, which will have an impact later on your state of health. Yeah. So many times when I have people coming with traumas, or very interesting personalities, which are definitely in the suffering mode more, I'm looking back, especially for the first years of life experience, because all of these lessons are correlated with our karma. Then we explain what is karma, what is dharma. Again, dharma related with archetypes and with what means to have a purpose in our life. Now, there are so many studies about, for example, Alzheimer. Alzheimer is more and more at early ages because we have less and less purpose in our life. We live in this era of information processing. So we start to put light over this process, because again, when you look at the child, just, it's so good for everybody to look at the child. And usually you see that it's so luminous. So on top of this light, then we put all kind of defense mechanisms. Or again, let's say a person or an event is hitting you, and then you start thinking that life is like that, and you create all kind of beliefs and deviations, and then this light becomes distorted. And again, when we speak about quantum science, which is really the bridge between science and spirituality, and here I mean, again, everything that has to do with health. So the quantum science principles, really, I can see the application in health, in psychology, in business, in the way we live lives. Eventually, this will come more and more clear, the principles in quantum science. But then still, again, we have to look at the following levels of consciousness. And Amit mentioned already the consciousness, yeah? Consciousness is the ground of all being. That's the first thing that we speak about in our courses in quantum science. So Atman, or the quantum self, and then the soul, which is the pre-conscious station of the self, and then the ego, which is the more constricted state of consciousness. That's the ordinary state of consciousness. We all have all these levels. And then when we say building the soul, or creating the soul, or reviving the soul, however you call it, it's to go beyond the ordinary level of intelligence, the survival intelligence, the ordinary IQ intelligence. But again, the thing is not just that IQ intelligence. It's the soul is the result of transformation. Transformation is not easy, and it's not a quick fix. Also in treatment for my patients, for all the process, for the students, for ourselves. And then again, difference from the usual way spirituality or religions speak about transformation is the fact that personality remains, even when we say at the soul level, that when you create the soul, when you not create, when you revive the soul, when but we become more and more authentic. And again, authenticity may not be easy and so pleasant for many people around us. That's why in life we will lose certain relations. We'll have to step out of some patterns, and it takes courage. So that again, so we emphasize courage on the path of growth, on the path of learning. So we discuss personality from the inauthentic self part of the ego. We study Enneagram a little bit, what sabotages the archetypes, and then we learn to penetrate them, to disidentify with the personality type, to the way towards integration. And it's really unique. So for every person is unique. And still, the quantum principles, once we understand them, the creativity, we can apply in quantum healing, in everything that we do. It's a soul journey.
Yeah, a soul journey, definitely, and transformation. Yeah, not a quick process. It's a life's journey, isn't it? And plus, plus, plus. I mean, that's really what you're saying there. Let's just come back to the basic title of the book, The Return of the Archetypes, Revisioning Yourself and Society with Human Values. Why do you think now is the time for you to, let's go back to Amit for this one. Why is it now the time that this that you're really passionate about getting this book out into the arena?
Well, because we need the archetypes right now more than ever. In the past 60 years, something very peculiar has happened to the progression of human civilization. This is unprecedented. We have four kinds of experiences: sensing, feeling, thinking, and intuition, which is even accepted in psychology. Carl Jung initiated that, and more or less people accept that we have these experiences. Now then, a prejudice came in the 1960s, starting 1960s, that matter is everything. And then people forgot these experiences and started proving, okay, how can matter do thinking? All right, so we developed artificial intelligence concepts and developed a kind of a discursive intelligence through expression of words, but not really having any experience of thinking. That's what AI, artificial intelligence is about. And then what happens is that we reversed ourselves. So we talked about ourselves as robots experience, implying that the experience don't mean anything. Experience have no causal efficacy. And this has led to, by progression, to a human being today, which literally is incapable of living as a civilized being. We have forgotten that we had actually lived kind of life with love, with goodness to each other for 70,000 years, according to the estimate of some anthropologists. And we are backtracking. We are saying goodness is in doubt, it's a pretend thing, love is a pretend thing, truth is a pretend thing. Look at the situation with political situation with Biden, how people are hiding truth, etc., etc. And politics has become so common. One political candidate for president in the United States lies, and nobody thinks anything of it because they too know that lying is the way it is. That's the worldview. That's materialism, which is a big lie. So archetypes are needed because we need to establish the cogency of these concepts. Without them, we lose civilization and then we forever live in chaos. Look at the chaos right now. Everybody knows that we should not and must not harm the environment by more consumption, and more gadgets, and pollution. Nobody does anything about it. We only pay lip service, knowing fully well that that is not doing anything, but just satisfy the politicians' need for getting votes. Same thing with everything. Same thing with economy. We know that the economy is not working. Capitalism is dead. Materialism is not capitalism. So in this way, we are, and then we talk about democracy violating, autocracy versus democracy, but we are really following democracy anyway. We are not. There is no participation of people anymore. So much money it takes to participate in democracy, but only the elites can participate. So in this way, we have lost our ways. The vision is gone. The vision that there is something in life, we need freedom, we need liberty for the pursuit of happiness. That vision is gone. What is happiness? That concept is even gone. We don't identify happiness anymore with expansion of consciousness. That happiness means that I have a consciousness liberal enough to embrace everybody. It does not mean that anymore. Happiness, as somebody said, dry martini. A drink is the happiness. A cigarette is the happiness. A house is happiness. This way we have objectified, even consciousness is objectified today. So looking at everything in objects for ourselves to make deals, life has become so transactional. Archetypes make a huge difference to this transactional life and opens us up. What is life really for? As Valentina said, we become attracted to meaning and purpose. And archetypes is our vehicle to pursue meaning and purpose. So we especially emphasize the love archetype, the goodness archetype, the basics of civilized behavior. Then we go into truth, we go into wholeness, of course. From a medical point of view, for happiness and health, wholeness is a must. If we have conflict, we cannot live happily. We cannot even touch happiness, even dream of happiness. We become conflicted even in our dreams. So conflicts must be resolved, and it is resolved only by the exploration of archetype of wholeness. We have to become whole, and we have become so divided, so divided. Valentina mentioned Dharma. We choose archetype to pursue in this life from our past life. There's a lot of evidence for it too. I myself discovered my archetype in an experience that traditions already talked about and quantum physics supports. Is called the crystallization experience. An experience comes to you that makes it clear what your life real purpose is. And that purpose is an archetype. For me, it was the archetype of wholeness. So, in this way, we really get a manual for living our life, for integrating how we think, how we live, even how we make our livelihood. This is the basics. This is why archetypes are needed. And if we learn to do this, all these things, they're really arising from conflicts. But first is to really resolve the worldview conflict between religion and science. Spirituality and science must be integrated. Excluded spirituality, excluding the archetypes, is the most disastrous thing, biggest mistake that human beings have ever made.
Valentina, do you have anything to add to that very comprehensive response?
Indeed, even if you're thinking of what means expansion of consciousness and what is contraction of consciousness, you know very well, Tim. And I think everybody already knows the impact of a contracted state of consciousness over time, but even immediately. And also, again, if we keep not being attentive, so we understand what is expansion of consciousness and how to get into that, how to allow ourselves to be inspired, but in the same time, we have to learn to cultivate attention. That's, again, sounds so easy. And nowadays, what we do with the kids, it's just very not good. Because we just throw a phone to the kids, which they don't have yet developed various areas in the brain. And already you prepare them for contraction of consciousness, so you don't prepare them to have experience of expansion of consciousness. You don't give them examples. You don't inspire them in this way because we don't really look at what's happening. So it's so interesting. That's the same when you are a doctor and you want to check the cause of a certain thing because it's not happening. Nothing is happening in the physical body unless we maintain a negative resonance or a lack of resonance with something good for a while. And then only it manifests in the bodies, eventually in the physical body, right? So we have to see the limitations of the brain, because whenever we don't pay attention, so that means more than intellectual attention, which many can do again. So we speak of attention beyond intellect, that attention which means reason centeredness, and we are aware that we are collapsing a choice. So this capacity to make a choice, we don't see it. We think that we choose, then we complain we don't have freedom, and I speak for myself as well. But we are more and more aware about the necessity of really developing our potential. That's the same direction of remembering about these archetypes. That's why it's called the return of the archetypes. And again, we really have all this potential. So it's a short life, and many times we don't live it so well,
But yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, so many things in that I could start to pull different threads at, but we'd be here all week. So some of the key things here, we might be going right back to basics, right? But because I've got you both here, and it's been some years since we had this opportunity. So I think one of the most powerful things in remembering and being mindful, being attentive of our being, and in order to then be consciously making our choices work for us, it's the concept which I think Amit put in one of his books, or you integrated into your books, about the feedback loop, the fact that we are, the reality that we're in is reflecting our present state, our present vibration. Now, Amit's already described that his archetype that he's primarily working on, we might put it this way, is working towards wholeness. It's the integration of wholeness into being. The paradox for me sits in the fact that the work that you're doing, and the work that I'm doing as well, I guess, to a different degree, is about helping people come to terms with their reality, shift their perception, give them power to make the changes, make the choices mindfully. And yet we're all three of us sitting here in an environment that is fairly removed from being heaven on earth. But we're saying that actually, if we follow our choices, what we're suggesting we can do, we have the power as human beings, as creative aspects of the conscious cosmos, to create heaven on earth. Why aren't we doing it?
Yeah, why aren't we doing it? And this is the basic question. Built into us, the evolution that we have had so far has been incomplete. It's not completed yet. The stages of evolution that we went through a huge amount of time during which we had to make sure that we can survive. That survival modality took all the time, life was created, people say 3.8 billion years ago. Okay, that's a long time. Human beings, Homo sapiens, took charge roughly about 70,000 years ago. That's when the final battle with the Neanderthals began, and eventually Neanderthals were eliminated, not in a pitched battle or anything, but because Neanderthals could not discover what the human beings discovered. Human beings discovered a process called self-domestication. Self-domestication involves not being so instantly violent if a survival necessity shows up. Like animals, they are fine for a while. You can even sit quietly with a tiger, but 1 second survival need arises, tiger will attack you and do things that you cannot predict. Human beings were like that too. And then we changed by the process we call domestication. But we domesticated ourselves. We became civilized enough to bring goodness, enough to mollify our negative emotions to some extent. Some humans at that point went ahead and developed the quality of altruism. If others are in need, we can also help them. And these people, this portion of humanity which could respond to this additional embodiment of the archetype of goodness, they are the ones that led us eventually to other archetypes. And human journey began outside of the confines of Darwinistic survival modality. Higher needs that Maslow talked about came into being, starting that 70,000 years ago or so. And ever since, we have been pursuing the archetypes. And then, as I said, something unprecedented, something that never should have happened because of the power play between scientists and religions that was going on, of course, always, since the inception of science. And church was responsible for the initial battle. But later, as science gained more and more power, science got caught into it. Amazingly, scientists, and especially scientists in America, did this. Other scientists did not participate so much in this, but literally, people at Harvard, Princeton, MIT, and those places on the Eastern Seaboard, they formulated this idea called what we call scientific materialism. Matter is everything. Consciousness does not exist. It's a brain phenomenon, if it exists. So these kind of ideas, unprecedented ideas, eliminated the very source of science. Science was the exploration of the archetype of truth. Now, truth does not exist. What is happening to science is very interesting. Science is becoming deceitful. You cannot trust scientific data anymore. You have to go into the original and see what they really did. And even then, you were suspicious that the data was not collected in an authentic way. Nobody is authentic anymore. Archetype of truth, archetype of wholeness, we already talked about, archetype of goodness, love, where are they, And the result, of course, in the Department of Health, this chronic disease, Valentina mentioned Alzheimer, but of course, there is heart disease and cancer that are directly connected with lack of love in our life. So because you have given up on goodness, you are really getting civilization into jeopardy. Because we are giving up on love, we are setting health in jeopardy. Because we are giving up on archetype of wholeness, we are giving up on health. Because we are not dealing with justice, look at the constant wars that are taking place. Because nobody feels that justice is being done to him or her. Because we don't believe in justice anymore, there is also this tremendous inequity between people because of lack of fairness. Because we don't value beauty anymore, the arts, which are always inspiring to us, they have lost the capacity to inspire. It's now all entertainment. So basically, art has become what it has become. In the 1970s, I remember a physicist was asked a question from the Armed Services Committee about why should we give money to physics research? And this physicist answered the question so beautifully. The physicist said, why should we defend the country? What are we defending? We are defending the arts. We are defending what the country is for. We're defending the goodness of people. We are defending the architecture we built. We are defending literature, the poetry. This is what defense is for. Something has to be defended, worth defending. That worth defending, worth pursuing, worth, human life is worth for something. This is what gives us satisfaction. When we have done something worthy, that's what gives us satisfactory life and lifts us from depression and the ennui that we generally suffer today. So the return of the archetypes. This is the vehicle which will take us back to civilization, back to all these things that will be worth living for.
Do you not think, though, Amit, that the chaos and the whole confusion, all of the deterioration that we see, or we appear to see in the world around us, if we look globally, do we not think that that could actually be symptomatic of a healing process that we are going through? So we are going through collectively a healing process, but this is like a healing crisis in a way. We've got a period of change, and that is always painful.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, I agree that the crisis is the danger that we see in the crisis also can be seen as an opportunity. And we mentioned this in the book. We say that, yes, it is the opportunity. This is why we named the book Return of the Archetypes. The archetypes went away. We banished them through scientific materialism. And of course, now we are getting the crisis. This crisis will make us think, okay, what did we do wrong? And we'll see that this hypothesis, matter is everything, has been the basis of all these problems that started since. And we'll correct that, and we'll go back to the path of exploring and embodying that we have been doing. We have been doing that. I mean, it's a very hard process. So of course, it has to go through various stages. But we really have been doing that in the age of science. We have developed democracy, we have developed capitalism, we have developed liberal education that truly could liberate. It was meaningful before. Higher education really did make people think about higher values, human values, and brought them to it. Finding people who can live the archetypes has been a regular problem. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, there is the concept that people have to be born again and again and bring back the archetypes. And that is the way human beings have been working so far, that it's up to a few people, the savants, who have to explore and embody the archetypes, and they will, when they take the leadership, then things can change. But I think the crisis is showing us that this is a few people doing it is not enough anymore. The world has so many people now, 8 billion people, requires a lot of leaders. So we just have to change that model that a few people will come and save us into one where there will be some indigenous efforts from the human being themselves to create these people. So this is why we have this University of Transformational Education that Valentina and I teach. This is what we try to do. We are trying to build new quantum leaders who will indeed be exploring and embodying the archetype and therefore be exemplars of what archetypes can give us. Believing the archetypes can do for our joy and happiness in life, especially return us to wholeness so that we don't suffer from these conflicts. All these problems, crisis problems, are due to conflicts. We have basic conflicts come from us.
Yeah.
Conflicts of greed, the negative emotions, concept of me-centeredness versus others. What is the place of others in our life if we become me-centered? These things have to be resolved, and we have been trying, but we have failed because suddenly we shifted our science to this very myopic worldview. And of course, religions have not helped. They reacted in the negative way. They should have reacted in the positive way, but they have not. That is something that is also built into the human being, the negative emotion, the reaction to action. So this is all that needs to change. We need to bring the two factions, religion and science together, spirituality and science together. And when we do that, we have really solved the major dichotomy. And when this major dichotomy is solved, I think we'll return to wholeness.
Okay. So,
Let me pick up on something that he said because of this dichotomy, transcendent and immanent. I think it's the first dichotomy that has to be approached is the male-female dichotomy, because that's the entering into the heart. And nowadays, as you see, so much confusion about the gender, and we don't discuss about this. No need now, but it's a big one. And we have in time, in our lives, so many experiences. Women get hurt, they close their hearts. Then we think all men are like that, or men are hurt, and then so all this has. It's blocking our heart actually, and the heart is not just a pump. The first dichotomy that has to be integrated is this one, male female, and as you do that, you will purify and also strengthen the heart area and the belly area. And this is the beginning where we speak about vital creativity. That's the beginning of getting in touch with the feelings in the body. Again, if we want to tap into expansion of consciousness, if we want to develop the brains, which is not just here, it's also described. I think we had the last talk about this. That's the way. So first of all is the heart. There's no, you cannot. So you can have glimpse of enlightenment, but it doesn't matter much unless we develop the heart, until we step into this heart, because then again we go with, for example, in the beginning, methods of forgiveness, when we know there's a contraction there, and self-forgiveness eventually, but then we would have to change our attitude towards ourselves many times, again, as if I speak for myself also. So as we grow, or we want to grow, we become very much self-criticizing ourselves. We may have all kind of guilt circuits from the brain. So for me, one of, I think, the most touching point which I got from quantum science in the first years I was working with Amit was this, that what the brain is throwing at us, and the fact that the negative emotional brain circuits in the brain, they are 5 times stronger than the positive, and that in the brain there's very little positive circuit there, and that if we want to tap into this positivity, there's no other way than through the feelings in the body, developing what we call chakras, and starts with the heart chakra, then the belly area. Again, if our hearts are still hurt, then we cannot step into our authenticity, and we need courage many times to do this step. So, and then again, for me, love comes first. I think for everybody, the archetype of love is the one that we have to manifest as human beings. Even in the Christian tradition, we have the cross sign at the level of the heart, not by coincidence, because underneath is the instinctual levels, which are, it's okay. So we have to build them up, with them healthy. If you think of the lower chakras and what the chakra psychology is speaking about those. So we need to have them purified and developed. But then eventually, when we speak about archetypes, practically speaking, we speak about manifesting them, these higher archetypes that Amit spoke about, once we awaken the higher levels of our being, which is the higher chakras, more precisely, starting from the heart, or even Vishuddha chakra is called here in the throat area. So also another thing is that when we say archetypes, you can also refer to what other traditions call as a divine attributes of God, if you want. And then when you say archetype, you don't think of as something finite. It's an infinite aspect, and you can choose to put yourself in resonance with that. And you can never fully grasp an archetype. They are part of a supramental experience. So when you say the supramental body, that's when we speak about the archetypes. So supramental, it's above the way we usually think or understand or communicate. And that's, again, it's requiring a melting of the mind and the heart in a process of superior understanding. And that's the place of healing also, the supramental level. When you heard about quantum healing, that's from where it starts. So when we manage to tap into this state of melting the heart and the mind when they awake, but we again, not the lower mind, the monkey mind, but the superior mind. We have to, not necessarily. So there are people, depends on where we are on our journey. Because Amit mentioned all this, we speak about mainly 9 archetypes that Amit just mentioned before. So these are Platonic archetypes. But for many people, we need to start, I would say, from the soul archetypes, kind of the feminine and the masculine archetypes, see where you are. And for other people, we have to start from the Enneagram personality level. Yeah, to discover. It's all about discovering ourselves. Now it depends where we are, how much is burning us to find ourselves, and how much, because eventually when you say about this higher Platonic archetypes, like for example, the archetype of love, in various traditions, there are different representations. So, but again, it's not by coincidence that we are, wherever we are in our lives, we may resonate or miss very much the resonance with a certain archetype. So according to how we grow up, according to what we encounter, what is really aching us, that we don't have, or what really represents that thing that you don't want to live without. So that's passion, and people nowadays, they live without passion. That's a problem, I see, So discovering that, what is really missing, and you really feel that you don't, it doesn't make sense to live this life without that. That's a value there. And I would say that you have to dig on that and try to practice in the creative way, doing and being, proper attitude for yourself. It's like a dance eventually. And then you don't know when it will hit you and you get into the state of inspiration.
Going back to one of the early things that you said, Valentina, in that response there, you said that the brain has 5 times more capacity to, or something like this, I'm paraphrasing, 5 times more capacity to put forward negative or detrimental processes. Is that neuroscience fact?
That's vintage neuroscience. Neuroscience has really that there are 2 places in the brain. One is the amygdala, where the negative emotions are, and the other is the anterior cingulate cortex. And that has those a little bit of altruism built into all of us. Some of us, 40% of us, have this altruistic circuit. But the rest of humanity don't even have that much of positivity. So their positivity entirely comes from the pleasure circuits, which often gets mixed up with negativity as well, because one has the survival motif and that me-centeredness. That means that all pleasure I keep for myself, not when I need a partner. Even then, I objectify the partner, and so pleasure is not entirely positive. It has very quickly degenerated into the negative because of this possessiveness. That's negative.
Right.
So very few things are positive that is in the brain as it is given to us. We have to develop the positive by working on the positive. This is why Valentina's work is so important. She works on the heart. This is where the positivity is generated. The heart and the navel chakra, these are the places where we get that positivity that we call love. And then there is midbrain, we can work on that and directly develop circuits of goodness that will further increase our positivity, and eventually we get to the supramental intelligence where there is no negativity at all. But this is a journey, we call it soul's journey, It is a journey which requires a lot of commitment, a lot of resilience, a lot of commitment, a lot of creativity. And so it is definitely not easy. But we have about 15% of today's people who are ready. There is quite a bit of evidence that people are getting interested in meaning and purpose, roughly 15%. And these are the people who are ready to get into the exploration and embodiment of the archetypes. They are the future of the humankind. Humankind literally has now, we are, at the, we are at the crossroads. This is literally correct. Because on one hand, artificial intelligence is threatening us that they can eliminate the necessity for human experience. They can do everything we need to do and all will be mechanical. So that's one future. And the other future is to go beyond the mechanical and get the archetypes into us and become really a human future human society, not a future mechanistic society. Well, let's see which way we go.
Oh boy, oh boy. Valentina, anything to add on any of that?
Yeah, I'm looking at myself and looking at what's happening. I think it starts in your garden for everybody. That's why when we say quantum activism, it's really something that you work on your transformation more and more real, more and more authentic. The more people become intelligent and strong, the more you will see the egos also, and then they will come to fight. And again, if there is no love, if there's no compassion, then people will again go on their own way, and there will be so many people which will still be lonely, and so many communities which eventually they have good purposes but they don't unite. So I'm looking at that because for me, being here on earth means that we should learn about that fraternity, and I don't see this yet happening too much, but hoping to see that.
If you were to leave the viewers with one thought at the most basic level for somebody to feel as though they do something right now, what would that be?
To cultivate love and compassion for themselves, and also to take themselves. Nowadays I see it's a lot of crisis, a lot of do, and to just take them with compassion, with love, with attention, resonate with nature, because, and again, have this question in the background that there's so much to know about ourselves and to get curious about this nature of ourselves, because there are so many nuances, so many qualities when we start knowing our own nature and awaken our soul. It's also a way to revalorize ourselves, kind of, or to bring value to ourselves in that way. The more we know ourselves, because many people, I see that it's a lot of lack of self-trust. We don't see our value in this way, but it's not the egoistic value. And we lose ourselves in so many details, in imperfections. When we understand the complexity of our being and the archetypes more, like we tap into resonance with them, we can understand better, and we don't compare with others. You don't develop yourself. So in this way, like knowing ourselves will bring value, and step by step, little by little, no matter where we are. I think this is our journey. Takes courage and love.
Lovely. Amit, anything to add? Final word from you?
Yes, I would add that indeed it is initially it is the exploration of meaning and purpose. That's the first thing that has to come to us. It happens twice in our life, once in the teenage, around the age of 13, 14, the other at what people call midlife transition, about 35, 40, 45, at that kind of age. So meaning and purpose, and once we wake up to meaning and purpose, we get into archetypes very easily, because archetypes comes from our intuition. That's the purpose of our life. We realize that we have something that come here to do. And that we chose in the past life. So we get into that, we discover our dharma. And then the life's purpose is easy. It's following our dharma, because that's the easiest archetype to follow. I came prepared for it. I brought karma with it, so that all the propensities that I have will support this particular exploration. So if people become aware of this, and basically as early as possible, then we could solve the problems that upsets our plan for good living, could be solved very much more easily. Problem is that society does not make it very easy because the knowledge has not been there. So we are doing a lot of research to give people the knowledge. Our belief is that if the knowledge is there, if the science is there, if what to do is there, more and more people will be able to do it. Anybody can ultimately do it, even without the reincarnational maturity. That certainly helps. But in principle, if we have a proper upbringing, if we have proper opportunities, and we certainly have the satisfaction of lower needs to make the exploration of higher needs possible, we certainly have enough affluence today. So from every direction you look, from the negative, we have crisis, we have to do it. From the positive, we have fulfilled the basic needs, and therefore now is the time to go for higher needs and find the archetypes and explore and bring heaven on earth.
Perfect. Thank you so much.